Hi everyone, it is Leslie from Lola Bell and thank you for joining me again. This week we're going to be talking about frames and how to frame a stone. So we've got a couple of really big flashy labradorites here, well, one really big and one slightly smaller. We're going to do a couple of different frames for them. We've also got this rectangular K2 jasper which we're going to have a look at. And I just wanted to show you a couple of different examples of frames. So we are going to have a tutorial for the Tree of Life, which will be a couple of weeks time, I think, maybe sort of towards the middle of April-ish by the time I've made it and edited it. But so we will have this style of pendant coming out. So this will obviously look at how to just do a round frame with your bail and then obviously creating your Tree of Life. But that is essentially building a frame for your stone. We've also got these two cute little wraps, which essentially this one is just made with one wire. So obviously when you look at it, it looks a little bit more detailed than that, but it is just one wire that comes round and over. And then we use some little catching wires at the back. So again, that's another one we're going to have a tutorial for coming up very soon. This is the same design, but just with some additional little embellishments, which would look really nice if you hammered them as well. But we'll obviously talk about hammering another time. So for today, what we're going to look at is basically creating a frame for a couple of different stones. Now, what you do beyond your frame is the world is your oyster, essentially. You can kind of play with different designs. You can have a back frame and then a front sitting, so you could have a weave around the front, you could have a braid around the front, you could just have swirls around the front. So there's so many different ways we can play this one, but we'll start with the frame, we'll make the frame, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to be using 18 gauge square copper for this one, and because this is going to be a frame where the stone is sitting in it, we need the frame to actually be just slightly larger than the stone itself. So we don't want to actually shape it to the stone. So the way I would go about doing this, let me just get all these little ones out of the way, is I would use my little mandrel and find, and I know this isn't a completely round stone, but it gives us the base shape to start building from. So I would find the approximate width of the stone, and then from there start to shape. So I'm just going to hold my wire over. I'm just going to zoom. No, that's in. I'm just going to zoom in there. So I'm just going to gently tease the wire around. I'm not going to hold it tight to the mandrel because, like I say, we don't want the frame to be tight to the stone. So we've essentially got a couple of millimeters edging around the stone. What we can do is we can kind of hold it loosely around the stone and just gently tease it in, but then letting it relax as you go so you can maintain that space around there. And then as we come over the top, again, we're just going to loosen it off. I'm going to hold it there, and I'm going to grab my mandrel again. And I'm just going to shape that top bit just approximately so the wires cross. And there you see we've got an almost perfect oblong. So all I did at the top point there was exactly what I did at the bottom. I just popped it over the mandrel and just closed up the wires so they were crossing over. What I am going to do is I'm just going to grab my measuring map. So we're going to find the approximate centre. So it's about there. And then I'm going to grab my Sharpie, which should be right here, but it's not. Where's my Sharpie? There it is. So what I want is, if I just place my stone, let me just move this up so you can see. If I just place my stone in the side, you can see that it's got a bit of a gap around it. It just needs to tighten up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a line where the two wires should meet. So as I pull them away, you can see those two lines will meet up. You can't really see them very well, but they'll meet up, and that's where we're going to bend the bail frame, the bail wires up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chain nose pliers. I'm going to grab just by the edge of that line, and I'm going to bend it up. And I'm going to do the same on this side. Grab it just by the edge of that white mark and bend it up. So you've now got this shape. So hopefully, if you've bent them in the right place and marked them in the right place, you should now have a big oval which your stone will sit in with space. Now, I'm going to hammer this slightly, but before I do, I'm just going to pull these two wires in. So I want them to sit flush, because if I hammer and these two separate, it's going to be a little bit annoying, a little bit awkward. So bear with me one moment. I'm just going to grab my hammering block and hammer. Okay, so I've got my hammering block. I've got my little leather pad underneath it to absorb the impacts and the vibrations. You can get rubber ones as well, which I also have, but I find this a little bit better. Okay, so what I'm actually going to use is I'm going to use a nylon hammer, because I don't want to shape the wire and I don't want to mark it either. So all I'm going to do is just gently move around the frame, just gently working my way up. You see how it didn't spring open then? So just making sure this is all lined up here. So what does hammering do? Hammering strengthens the wire. So this is now a lot less, this is soft wire, but this is actually now quite solid. So we'll just go in and double check that it's not moved, which it hasn't, which is perfect. And we'll get rid of the hammering block for a second. And we will grab some half round wire. So with my half round wire, I'm just going to run up the bail a little bit. I'm going to use a slightly thicker half round, so I'm going to use 18 gauge. Because this is a big stone and a big pendant, let me get rid of this measuring mat now. Using the thicker wire is going to look, it's going to look quite chunky. We want it chunky because the stone is chunky. So I've got my half round wire, like I say, 18 gauge. I'm just going to hook it around. I'm going to make sure it's flat side down first. I'm going to hook it around, and I'm just going to do 2 or 3 wraps around these 2 wires before I go any further. I'm just going to flatten this off, make sure it's all sitting nice, and then I'm going to pull those wires down to the point where the shape of the pendant starts to form. So with anything like this, we can adjust. The main thing we do when things move is we don't panic. As soon as we panic, things start going horribly wrong. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pull that in through the centre. I'm using the wrong pliers. I'm going to use my chain nose pliers because that would make it a lot better and easier. I'm just going to shimmy that up, and I'm just going to go around once or twice here, And all that's going to do is just secure the wire. I just want to make sure it's nice and clean. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess and pinch that end in. So it's just sitting there. And then what we can do is we can continue to wrap the bail up. So I will carry that on and I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so we've got the bail wrapped. I'm just going to get my flat nose pliers and I'm just going to smush up the bail, squeezing down these wraps. So they have a nice flat edge on them. And then I'm just going to hold the pendant frame and just bend that forward a little bit. And the reason I hold the frame is I don't want, if I just try and yank it forward, the chances are I will bend the frame out of shape. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bail making pliers. I'm going to do quite a big bail, quite a tall bail on this one because it's quite a big pendant. So there's that. And then with these two wires at the base here, I just trim them down, grab hold with my bail making pliers again, and then I just pull these up and to each side. So you can see it's like a V. What that then allows me to do is secure these around the frame. So basically attaching the bail back onto the frame to hold it in place. And it's entirely up to you whether you do one wrap, two wraps, whatever. This can absolutely become part of your decoration. And it's I personally prefer to do this before I put any of the back wires in, because it just gives me freedom to move the wires through the frame to secure them around. So I'm going to go for 2 wraps here. And 2 wraps here. There we go. So you can see I've got 2 wraps at the front and 2 wraps on the left, 2 on the right. And then you're going to just trim off this excess. So we can tuck these wire ends in, like so. Get rid of those. So then again, just using my chain nose pliers, just going to hold the bail, and I'm just going to smush that end around and in to the inside. So this is going to be the front of the pendant. Again, when doing a frame, it's always worth just chucking your stone in, making sure that it's not moved, changed, whatever. And then obviously just checking that your bail is still lining up. So if you've got one of these measuring cards, it's actually quite good, because if you pop it on, you can essentially just check that everything is nice and straight, which it does look as though it is, which is good. Sometimes I look at these and I think that doesn't look level, but there, so you can see the stone sits in there. Alright, so the next stage of the frame, because obviously at the moment there's nothing to connect the stone to, so what we're going to do is we're going to take some more of the 18 gauge half round wire, and we're going to cut 1, 2, 3 lengths of roughly, eyeballing it, maybe about 8 to 10 centimeters. This now all depends on how big your bail, not your bail, sorry, your frame is. Essentially, you just want enough to wrap around. So, what we're going to do, flat side up, So you're just going to position it where you want it, and then we're just going to make sure everything's where we want it. We're just going to fold one side down, like so. So you can see, sorry, that's blurring. And then you do the same, so it's level on the other side. Try and keep it level. And you can see that you've got a line. So you've got a moment where you can adjust. Like I say, you want it to be level. So we're going to just take one end, and we're just going to bring it around. Again, this is part of your design, so whether you do 2 or 3 wraps is entirely up to you. I'm going to do 3. I'm going to trim there and pinch in. Now again, I'm just going to double check. I want to make sure we're straight. And then we're going to do the same on this side. So go once round, twice round, and 3 times round. And there you have the first of your back wires. And then again, obviously, we just give everything a bit of a smush. So that's the first. We'll just repeat that for the second and the third. And like I say, it's entirely up to you. You can put 5, you can put 2. Really depends on how big your stone is. Because if you're imagining your stone is going to sit over it, if it can come through, which this one can't, then that's obviously going to, it's not going to hold it securely. So I'll just fit these 2 and then I'll be back. Okay, so there we go. We've put all of our back wires in. So you can see they are flat edge up. So the back of the stone will be able to sit quite nicely now on those 3 wires. And it's just a case now of designing the front. So there's different things we could do here. We could do a weave, we could do a braid, we could do swirls, we could literally do anything really. It's the world is your oyster type sort of moment. So that is frame number 1. So let's just recap on that. So hammered the or shaped it loosely around the mandrel, then loosely around the stone, allowed it to relax, marked it with the Sharpie so we could bend the bail wires up, fitted, wrapped the bail so we could secure it down here, and then we've attached the back wires for the stone to sit on. So there is your frame. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go off camera and I'm going to finish the design of this one, and then I will be back shortly. Okay, so here we go, the finished piece. So you can see I've done a braid around the edge here, which is quite a simple look, I think, but it can be a little bit fiddly. So with this, all I've done is I've got 8 wires, and they're 0.5 mil, which is 22 gauge, I think. As I always say, I'm a bit rubbish with gauges. And we're literally just braiding them round each other. To connect them to the main frame, you'll see we've got these half round, 0.4 mil half round wires just dotted around, and all they are is they're just connecting to the back frame here, just so obviously it's all held together. And then for the finishing, we've just, or I don't know why I keep saying we, have just wrapped, obviously they've crossed over the front of the bail, they've wrapped around the back. The one with the longer tail wires have turned into these swirls. So you can see I've got 4 wires coming off to one side, 4 off to the other, and the others have just trimmed and tucked in at the back there. So that is one example of framing a pendant, or building a frame for a pendant. So they are really, really nice techniques, really, really nice finish. This will look really nice once it's oxidized and polished. So once I've done that, I will get some pictures up in the community tab. So, you know, make sure you check out in there and keep your eyes out for things like that. But that's obviously one potential frame. Now, obviously, you could do similar with this. You know, with this stone, you could, again, you could do the braid, or you could do like a weave. You could actually do a weave pattern. And then with the square, or the rectangle rather, what I would be inclined to do is start the same. So you have the frame around the back building into the bail, so just a simple 1 wire frame, and then you could do maybe some lines actually across the stone, so maybe sort of just basketing it into the frame. So again, what I'll do is once I've made that, I will pop that up on the community chat. Obviously, if I start making another pendant with these, I am going to end up making a ridiculously long tutorial. So having sort of reassessed my thoughts and thinking, yeah, do you know what, I'll do a couple of different ones. I think probably best not. We'll be here all night. With these style, I will do a video on these very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And then, as I said at the beginning, the Tree of Life, which again is just a simple single wire built into the bail and then tucked around. So same as how we created this frame. We've just not had to do the back wires because the tree is what holds it on. So obviously the back wires are not necessary. Again, this will be oxidized. But yeah, so there's a couple of different potential ideas for framing your pendants and how to start the frame. Once you get to the front, it's kind of everything is open for play, really, because you can just do different things. I do have another frame that I'm working on at the moment, so this is very, very much a work in progress. So the stone is not yet connected, but obviously you can see the frame is huge. So this is literally, I'm just holding this here temporarily just to kind of work out where I'm going with it. So that's another idea. Again, building a bigger frame. It's the same. So we're just creating these back wires. So if I take this off, it's all just held together willy-nilly at the moment, so I can just try and sort of think whilst I'm working. This is kind of one of those projects where bang the camera, sorry about that. One of those projects where I sort of pick it up and put it down. So the frame in itself is kind of like this triangle. Again, it's been hammered into that shape. The stone is made to size. Obviously, the frame itself is made to size on stone, and then this will all fill out over here as we build into it. So it's all to play for, really. When you're doing frames, you can literally make any shape, any style. It's just whatever you fancy. So again, I'll bring these back into the view. Different frames, different things that you can do when you start working with frames. So anyway, I hope that's been helpful. I hope it's been interesting. A little bit of a different style to what we usually look at. But obviously we can always sort of play with creativity and learn new things. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Obviously, you know, the videos are coming out now on a weekly basis. I'm just trying to grow the YouTube channel gradually, so not too quick. But obviously, any questions, anything you want to ask, any comments that you've got, Would you, you know, let me know in the comments, would you wear, obviously not this one because it's not made yet, but would you wear these? Would you, is this something that you would wear? You know, different sizes and styles of pendants, or what would you do different? How would you decorate your pendant? Let me know in the comments. So anyway, I'm gonna end it there, but anything you've got to ask or say, just pop them in the comments. I always try and respond as quickly as I can. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next tutorial. Take care, guys. See you later. Bye.